Today, you're going to find a photo that you're going to use as your reference for whenever you complete your watercolor landscape. And there's certain types of photos that we need to choose and photos that we want to avoid. So what I'm going to be looking for in the photos that you choose is that it's an actual photograph taken by a professional photographer. I don't want you guys using photos that you might have on your phone because we need to have a solid silhouette and then a very simple sunset background or constellation sky. The sky should include at least 2 to 3 bright colors that gradate into one another if you want to do the sunset. If you're doing the galaxy, we need to also have another 2 to 3 bright colors that gradate into one another. In your photo, you also have to have an interesting silhouette in the foreground. Notice how everything in the foreground is completely black. That's what you have to look for. If you're seeing different objects of various values and it's not one solid black shape, then I'm going to ask that you avoid using that photograph, mainly because we don't have the time to put in all of that detail and to really learn how to put in that extra detail well with the time constraints that we have for the rest of the quarter. So the images on the right are the ones that you potentially should be, working from. You're not allowed, though, to use this cactus photo or the constellation photo that we did today and yesterday. You have to choose a different photo. Things to avoid. You do not want to choose a one color background. That's too simple. You're not really applying your techniques. So that is something that you're going to want to avoid. You also want to avoid choosing a blurry image. Whenever you guys search images on Google, you can see the pixelation number in the bottom right-hand corner of the picture when you click on it. And the larger that number is, like if it gets into like the 900s or the thousands by 1,000, then that's a good quality photograph. If it's smaller, like 200 by 300 pixels, then it's just too small and it's going to get too blurry. The reason why we don't want a blurry image like this is because you're going to have to draw all of this detail in the tree. And if you can't see that detail clearly, then it's going to be really hard to put that in and have it look realistic. I also want you to avoid choosing images with too many variations of color. As you've probably found out in the past 2 days, that watercolor is a little complicated. And if you have lots of crazy undulations of color that show clouds or even these muted tones that we're seeing in this painting, it will just make it a very challenging process for you. So avoid using pictures with many, many variations of color. You also cannot choose a painting. You have to have a photograph. So you might find a painting that you think looks really cool, but we're going to be painting from life. We're not painting from someone else's artwork. We're going to be making original works, so you cannot paint from someone else's painting. Whenever you're researching images, look up sunset silhouettes. You can look up galaxy sky silhouette landscapes. You can look up constellation sky silhouette landscapes. Any one of those key Google terms will help you whenever you find your photo. I would recommend finding at least maybe 2 to 3 photos that you really, really like and then submit them, and I'll give you feedback on what I think would be probably the most successful one for you to do. But have that photo submitted by the end of the day so I can give you feedback before we get started next week. You cannot use either one of these photos that we did for our practice landscapes, but today, after you find the reference photo that you want to use, I want you to begin practicing mixing the colors in your sky and actually painting what your sky could potentially look like on a smaller scale on one of your practice watercolor papers. This is to help you learn what colors you need to mix and to see what you need to do differently whenever you do it for your final project. So in addition to finding a reference photo today, you also have to practice making a little mini version of your landscape sky on your practice watercolor paper.